Hello guys, welcome back to Horus Labs YouTube channel. In today's episode of the Becoming a Cairo Node series, we're going to be learning how you can manage your Cairo projects with concepts such as packages, crates, and modules. As always, if this is your first time joining us, I'll advise you go back to check out that episode so you'll be able to follow this particular one. And of course, do like, share, subscribe if you find our content interesting and engaging. And without further ado, let's get started. All right, so thus far with everything we've probably done since we began the series, right? We've usually had to write our codes within like the lib.cairo file, which I explained earlier was like the root or the place the compiler goes to like look for stuff, right? And we have also seldomly at some certain point, right? We probably had to separate our codes into like different files, and we would usually do something strange like going into the lib.cairo to like add mod the name of the file, right? And probably all those things have been a bit confusing to you. In this particular episode, I'm going to do my best to like clarify these things and how they work. All right, so we're going to be starting from the concept of packages and crates. Now, what exactly is a crate, right? So from the Cairo book, right, is a crate is a subset of a package that is used in the actual Cairo compilation. So probably I would have preferred we probably look at what a package is before coming back to a crate, right? So essentially, when we talk about a package is what's generated every single time we run scab new this. So every single time where we had to run scab new, there's something and we have to choose between like a normal, if we want a normal Cairo or something with like the Stacknet Foundry test run and stuff, right? So that package which we initialize, which would always usually rename, right? That's what the package generally is. So if you check out the package, so let's head into our code editor, right? So we can initialize the package and probably run through what the package would usually look like. Back in our code editor, I'm just going to come as we've always done, right? So let me clear this. Oh, sorry. Back in the terminal. Okay, let me just clear this terminal. And yeah, so would usually start with scab new, right? And let me just call this packages, and it's going to ask you statement foundry or cairo test. We usually always use the basic cairo test, so we're just going to use that as always. Yeah, and as is our custom, right? So we're going to come in here and rename this. So I'm going to rename this to BAC9. All right. Yeah, something else we forgot to do was always go into the readme, right, and update this so you can actually follow with like the code on GitHub. All right, so I'm just going to call this let's call this packages, crates, and modules. I think that should work. Okay, so we're going to go into BAC9, right? And we've probably never really needed to look at the architecture. Okay, I think we did that in episode 3 or 2 where we first of all where we looked into scab. But anyway, so when you go into when you initialize a new scab package, right, you can see you have 3 major stuffs. You have the source folder, which is basically where your contracts are supposed to go into. You have your .git ignore file, which can contain different things that scab wants you to ignore. You want to ignore your codes, right? And then we have the scab.toml file. Now the scab.toml file is actually like super important, so you must always find it like in every scab project you initialize, right? And it's kind of like a toml file, right, that specifies different think of it as something that specifies the specifications of like your package. For JavaScript developers, something like your package or JSON, right? And it has different parts, but one of the things that is usually compulsory, right, is this package section. So the package section essentially is where you usually specify the name, the version, and the edition of like your project. So the edition, I don't think the edition is really compulsory, right, but the name and the version is something you must always specify. But let's head back into like our browser and go like to the official scab documentation to just clarify some things. All right, so back in our browser and into the official scab documentation, right? This like documents everything you need to know about the manifest format. So it's like as I said earlier, the first section you'd always find, right, is like the package section. And what this basically does is it specifies like details about your package, such as the name, the version, the license, the description, all those things, right? And yeah, I was correct. Like the required fields are the name and the version, and every other thing. Like for example, scab has this registry repository, right, where you can actually publish your packages. And if your package you intend to publish it, right, so important things or important details you want to add to the package that Scap looks out for, right, the license, the description, the homepage, the documentation, the repository, and the README. So this is what the Scap Cairo package registry kind of like looks like. So in here you can find some of like the most popular packages within like the Cairo ecosystem if you want to like really install anyone for use within like your Scap project. All right, so because of time, we're just going to like you can check out this documentation later if you're looking to like really understand anything as regards like the how the manifest package works, right? But let's just hop back into like our code editor to continue from where we stopped, right? So there's also the dependencies section where you can actually specify certain dependencies you want like your package to use. We're going to also be looking into that as we go further into like this particular episode. Yeah, so you can also actually specify dev dependencies. So dependencies that are actually for development purposes, you can actually also specify them. For example, you can see we have like a default dev dependency here, which is like the Cairo test. All right, so now we also have like the concept of create, which is like think of it as where like most of your codes like in your package are contained, right? So for your create, we usually have what we call the create root, or something I've always called the entry points, right, since we started. And this is the lib.cairo file. So this is like the entry points to like your create. This is how you tell you specify to the compiler okay, these are the files I really want to like I want you to compile, I want you to look at, right? So most times we've had to like kind of like write all our codes inside the lib.cairo, and when we do that, automatically the compiler just goes in there and runs any codes it finds, most times like within like the main function. So that's what the lib.cairo file is essentially. It's kind of like like I said, it's the create root, the entry point. All right, so we're going to clear this and we're going to be doing some really cool stuff. But before then, let's just head back into our Cairo book and just explain some little more concepts. I'm probably going to not be doing a lot of the reading, because there's a lot of reading to do in this particular episode. So I would advise that you actually go back to check the Cairo book later, because we're not going to be doing like a lot of the reading. So you can just go back to do that on your own later. All right, so we already looked at how you can create a new package, right? We've looked at what the create root is. We've looked at how you can create a new package. All right, I think that's it for this session. There's a little quiz. Let's just take this and move on. So which is the correct order where A greater than B means A contains B? So like I explained, it's package. Package is what when you run Scap, your package is what's generated. Then you have the create, which is basically like what is supposed to contain, like your project folder, everything. Then we have module, which is like used for better code organization. So we're going to be looking into module in the next chapter. So in other words, it's package to create to module. So this is the correct answer. All right, so we got that right. So the next thing we're going to be looking at essentially is how to define modules to control scopes. So modules is kind of like I said, like something that helps a lot with like code organization, and you've probably seen us do it, specify modules from time and time again, right? Which we do usually like the mod keyword. So let's just hop back into our Cairo book and see how we can actually specify modules and how we can use them. All right, so we're back in the Cairo book, right? And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to create okay, we have the lib.cairo. I'm going to create an additional file here. Let's just call this garden.cairo. All right, so garden.cairo is going to contain some other external stuff, right? And as I've always explained, when you have like a particular file that you want the compiler to reference, but is not like within the lib.cairo, one thing you should always do, right, is you should expose it within the lib.cairo, and you can do this by saying mod garden. So essentially, we're saying we're telling the compiler that when you get to the lib.cairo, the create root, right, there's an additional file somewhere called garden that would want you to use. So essentially, when you do something like that, right, like I said, the compiler would know, oh, right, so I want to use garden. Okay, so within the garden.cairo, we're going to be writing our very first module. So I'm going to be creating a module. Let's call this module vegetables, right? And this module is going to contain, let's just say, constant called vegetable, which is going to be of type like felt 252. And it's going to or just going to put any vegetable we know. So I'm just going to put lettuce. All right. So we just created this module, right? And this module contains this constant called vegetable. Now, what happens when, let's say, I want to have access, or I want to access this constant vegetable in lib.cairo? Now, the way I can do that is, first of all, I need to gain access, right, to like this what's it called, the vegetable module within like the garden file. And if I get access to that, then I should be able to like gain access to like what's it called, the vegetable constant. All right, so what I want to do in this case, right, is I want to introduce like the this vegetable module we created, right, into our lib.cairo. And to do that, essentially, we're going to create let's create another module, right? I'm going to just call this module the gardener. So I'm going to call this module the gardener, right? And this module is going to kind of like let's say tell us the vegetables within the garden that he's growing, right? The module is growing. All right, so now the module, the only vegetable we have in our vegetable garden at the moment, right, is the lettuce vegetable. I want to tell people, okay, I'm growing this lettuce vegetable. How can we do that? So that's where the use keyword comes in, right? So we use the use keyword basically to reference a particular module in another file. And when you are actually looking to like reference a module in another file, you have to specify what we call an absolute path. Now, when you actually specify an absolute path, right, you actually start from the what's it called, the package name. So it's like the package name, which is essentially the name that you use to actually instantiate the package. So it's the package name to like the particular file in this case you want to reference, which is like in this case garden.cairo, to like what's it called, the module name in this case, which is vegetables. So to the module name. So like I said, if you notice, right, you noticed we actually skipped like the source folder, because automatically, like I said, the source is like, it contains like the code, right, the crate. So essentially when you specify like the package name, essentially just goes automatically into like the source folder, and then it search for the next thing, in this case is the package file name and then the module name. So in our case, this is where you can get the package name. So if you go into like the scarp.toml, you can see the name of our package, right, is packages. I'm just going to like rename it to garden. All right, so now back in our lib.cairo, I'm going to say we're going to, okay, let me just name this veggies, or veggie garden. All right, so I'm just going to do that to prevent any sort of conflict. All right, so I'm going to name that veggie garden, and I'm going to say I want to use veggie garden, right? And within Virgin Garden, we have like this garden file. So I want to use garden. So as you can see he exposes garden or gardener, because now when we call Virgin Garden, it comes into lib.cairo. Okay, what are like the available modules that I can use within lib.cairo? They are garden and they are gardener, but what we want to use is a garden. So in garden, I want to use vegetables. Now, if I do this, you can see it throws some errors, right? So if you try to compile this code, so if I clear this and I run scarp build, right, you're going to get an error. This is, sorry, we always forget to do this. So we're going to see the into BAC 9. I'm going to clear and I'm going to run like a scarp build. So you're going to see you choose an error that says the item vegetables is not visible in this context. And that is because every time you want to use a particular module, right, in another file that's outside its context or something, you need to specify that you want it to be public. So to specify you want something to be public, right, to use the pub keyword. So the pub keyword essentially is how you tell the compiler, okay, I want this particular module to be used outside this file, in this case, the garden file. So if you don't do this, right? So by default, modules and if everything, modules, structs and norms, everything you'd probably like encounter within like your Cairo program, right? They are private by default. So if you want to use them externally, you have to specify them as to be public, and you do that using like the pub keyword. So if you specify something as so just specifying this module right as public still does not really give us access to the vegetable. So even if we try to access let's say for example we try to access vegetable, you see we'll get an error again that says vegetable is not visible in this context. So even after doing that, you still have to also come here and specify that you want vegetable to be public. All right, so when we do that, you see now we have access to vegetable. We can now just simply do something like, so I'm just going to create a main function. And in my main function, I'm just going to use print line, and I'm going to print out vegetable. All right, so when I clear this, if I clear this and I run scarf Cairo run, you can see that we get printed out like the name of our vegetables in this case, right? This, so you can see this is like the field 252 version of like what we passed in here. Remember we passed it in as a field 252 as let you, so that's like the field 252 version. All right, so having looked at that, let's just hop into our career book and see if like there are still any more things to cover. So I'm just going to go back into the career book, right? And yeah, okay. Well, we already looked at modules, sub modules. We've looked at parts, private versus public, how to use the use keyword. All right. So grouping related codes with modules. So something, like I said earlier, right? Something you can actually do within your code, right? Is you can actually like group related logics using like modules. So if I head back into my code editor, now, when you're building like large complex applications, right? Oftentimes you want better organization because it's more or less like whilst of course anyhow probably like if your code writes if compiled, deployed, and all those things to still work as expected, right? But at the same time, you need to also know you're not writing the codes just for yourself, right? But for other developers and even yourself, your future self, right? When you go back to essentially like look at your code, add new features, it's easier to like update your code if it's like a lot more organized. And so that's one of the reasons why you probably would want to use something like a sub module to like let's say organize things that are together, right? So you could say, okay, for example, within our vegetables, we have this constant called vegetable. Now, let's say I want to add a new module and I want to specify like root vegetables. I could actually create a new module for that, right? And I could specify, for example, carrots. And I'm just going to say carrots. So that's a root vegetable. And I could say, okay, I want another module for like, let's call it leafy veggies. And within leafy veggies, I want specify, okay, spinach. And I'm just going to say spinach. So you can see we have all these multiple modules within like the vegetable modules. Now, if we come within our lead.cairo and we want to like, let's say use any of this, right? Remember as always, you have to expose it to be public. So we can expose this to be public, expose this to be public. We can decide to expose this to be public too and expose this to be public. And this doesn't really matter, but essentially we can also do the same thing we did here. So we can say we want to use in veggie garden, we want to use in vegetables, we want to use within leafy veggies, I want to use spinach. And I could do the same, say within veggie garden and garden and vegetables and root veggies. I want to use like a carrot. So I could just do similar thing, just the way I printed. So I could say, let's just do, okay. Yeah. I'll just copy and paste this. So and we can just come here and just print out spinach and print out like carrot. So when we try to run this, we should have this run and print out like vegetables, spinach, and carrot in their field to representation. All right, and essentially that's how you want to group like organize different parts of your codes are probably similar, like similar functions and stuff using like modules. So let's hop back into our Cairo book, and we just looked at how you can group related codes in modules. All right, so we're just going to take this one question so we can move to the next thing. So it says, which of the following is not a benefit of using modules? Modules provide a scope to avoid naming conflict across parts of a code base. Yes, modules encapsulate implementation details that shouldn't be used by external clients. Modules group related code so programmers can more easily work on a large code base. Modules boost the runtime performance. So this is the answer. So modules have no business with boosting performance. Just use that compile time basically for organization. All right, so that's correct. All right, so in the next episode we're going to look into like how they use parts and stuff. uh all right, so there are basically two different types of parts, right? We have the absolute part and the relative part. So most of what we've done thus far, right, is basically like using the relative, the absolute parts. But basically, when we talk about using like relative parts, right, we talk about basically this relative parts would most likely be used where you want to refer to another module within the same file, right? So they have to actually be in the same file. So for example, as you can see within the Cairo book, so we are trying to call the front of house module, which is within like the same file, and you can decide to not really start from like the creator, the package name, right? Just simply go like to refer to like the front of the house module, simply because like both are like in the same file, right? You can also do that using like the super keyword. All right, so we already looked at how you can expose parts using like the pop keyword. You can also do similar thing as I explained earlier using like the super keyword. So you use super to refer to something that is also within like the same file. And something else you need to also take note of, right, is the fact that when you're using pop or trying to expose structs and enums, you need to ensure that you also do similar things for all the elements, unless like the compiler is going to shout at you. To explain what I mean, right? So for example, if I was trying to like create a struct, maybe let me just do this in the lib.cairo, right? I was trying to create a struct in here, and let's see, struct veggie, vegetables. Okay, let's not use vegetables, let's just use fruits this time around. Struct fruits, and fruits probably had like apple, which is going to be felt 252, orange, which is going to be like a felt 252. Right now, if I want to make this struct public, and I just come here and specify the pop keyword, you also have to like specify the apple and the orange as public, unless you won't be able to like access this from like, let's say, another file or something. So you have to come here and add the pop keyword here, come here and add the pop keyword here, and in that way you can access like the struct items or the struct members when you actually make a call to like the structs. So because of time, we'll head back into our Cairo book, and yeah, we have one more quiz, so let's just take that and run to like the next. So determine whether the program will pass the compiler. If it passes, write the expected output of the program. So we already just talked about this, right? So you're using like a pub on the struct, you have to ensure that this and this are also specified as public. So this is not going to compile. Then we have this. Okay, it says determine whether the program will pass the compiler. If it passes, write the expected output of the program. All right, so we have the pub mode A. This is public. This function is public. This. So let's just head into our main function. That will help us save time. So in our main function, we're trying to call entry. So A is public, so we can access A. Then we access entry. In entry, we're trying to call super B. All right, so we're calling B here, and in B we're calling C, and in C we're calling F. So it's going to compile, and essentially we're just going to get C2. All right, so let's see. So we passed that, we passed that. All right, so the next thing I'm going to be looking at, right, is how you can actually bring parts into scope. I think we already covered this too. So essentially, let's back in our career book, right? It's just exactly what we did here, right? So you can just the way we had vegetables and all these things, we brought them into scope, right, using like the use keyword. So essentially that's what the use keyword is for bringing things in other, like in other modules or other files and so on and so forth, right, into scope. Now you can actually do something like using what we call using alias, right? So for example, I can do something that, let's say I want to import vegetable as let's say veggies. I could actually do something like that, use vegetable as veggies. And in here, you can see like vegetable is no longer accessible. So I have to like, pass that in as veggies. So if you do that and you try to run, you see that it should still run like without any errors or any panicking. Yeah. So you could actually use the as keyword. Something else you could actually do, right, is you could actually group your use statements. So for example, as you can see, we're importing these things from, like, we're importing multiple things from like the vegetables module. So I could actually do something like grouping them. So this is how I would usually group them, right? So I would just use a comma, and I'm going to cut this out, everything from vegetables, since that's where we're importing. I'm going to cut that out. Everything from vegetables here, I'm going to also cut that out. And of course, when you're importing like a lot of items, you are not exterminating like the semicolon, because you are still importing like most stuff. So we're going to use like the comma instead. So when you're done, that's when you close like with the curly braces and then use your semicolon. So this is essentially how you want to import multiple items from the same thing. This is actually very important, as it helps like group your groups. It helps you group your code, right? Preventing multiple imports, which can sometimes like really look a bit scattered. So if you save that and you try to run that, you see that that still like compiles. And yeah, so I don't think there's anything we're missing out on, but let's just hop back into our career book and see if there's anything we still need to touch on. All right, so back in the career book, like I said, we've already practiced how to use the use keyword, and we've looked at how we can use the ask keyword, import, how you can import multiple items. Yeah, essentially re-exporting them. So we're going to look into this when we like get into like the last sub chapter. But one more thing I wanted to mention just before we head into the next sub chapter, right, is you can actually use external packages in Cairo with Scab. So I said when we started, we looked at a session in your manifest file called dependencies. Now that section is where you would want to specify all external packages. So most especially when most times people have probably built like a Cairo, for a very popular example, the Open Zeppelin library, right? So these are really pre-built components that you could actually import and use in your own application. So to do that, you could actually just specify like the OZ library, the link to like the GitHub of the Open Zeppelin library, right? You can also like filter by things such as like the particular commit, the branch you want to actually use, the tag you want to use, etc. Of course, you can also import another particularly popular library, right, is the Alexandria library. So you could actually like import and use that too. All right, so let's see if we can just take this quiz too before we go. So which of the following statements best describes the function of the use keyword? So use reduces the verbosity of referring to items in the use path. That sounds correct. So let's see others. Use allows access to items that circumvent normal privacy rules. No. Use copies the contents of an item. No. Use indicates the compiler. No, no, no. So this should be the answer. Use reduces the verbosity of referring to items in the used path. All right. So the next thing we have, it says consider this module and use statement. So inside the main, what is the total number of parts that can refer to A, B, or C, not including those that use self and super? Write your answer as digits such as 0, 1. For example, if the only two valid parts were A and parent B, then the answer would be 2. All right. So by importing use parent A, so we can definitely refer to A, for example, as parent A and A which we already imported, right? So we can refer that's two ways of referring to A. B we can't refer to B because B is a private function, so we can't exactly use that. Then for C is imported as an alias, so we can refer to C as parent child C. We can also refer to C as alias C, right? Because we import child as alias. So that's two ways to represent C and two ways to represent A. So that makes a total of four representations. All right, so we got those two correctly. Now, finally, separating modules into different files. Now, this is something I wanted us to also do because we've done this like time and time again, and you probably did not really understand what we're doing. So let's hop into like our code editor, right, and to do something like that. All right, so now, thus far, we've had the Cairo as like a different file, right? And we had to import it into like a lib.cairo. Now, sometimes when you're building more complex applications, right, you probably want to like put things in folders. So let's say I have like a new folder, and I'm going to call this folder fruit, right? And I'm going to have another folder, and I'm just going to call this vegetables. All right. So within the fruit folder, I can have different files like apple.cairo. I can have another file such as orange.cairo. And within the vegetables, I can have something like spinach.cairo, and I can have something else as lettuce.cairo. All right. So now within apple.cairo, this is going to be very red. So I'm just going to let's just do create a module. I want this to be public, right? So let's just start with the pub keyword. So public module apple. All right, and in it, I'm just going to have like this public constant called Apple, and it's going to be a field 252. I'm just going to refer to Apple. Okay, so most of this does not really make much sense, right? But it's just to like explain like a good, just as an example. So orange, and I'm going to call this orange, and this is going to be like orange. All right, for spinach, I'm going to do same spinach, and spinach, and in this, I'm going to use spinach, and this is just going to be spinach. All right, so we're going to do one last time for lettuce. So we can do lettuce, right? Come here, lettuce, and finally lettuce. All right, so when we have all this, essentially, now if you try to remember the lib.cairo, as I said, okay, let's do something else. Let's do something else. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to print out this. I'm just going to do this, right? Yeah, so this is just sort of to like prove a point. So nothing uh nothing with really good use case. All right, so in the Apple module, we just want to simply print out the constant Apple, right? In the orange module, we're going to print out orange and print out like the orange constant. All right, the spinach module, we're going to do similar stuff. Say spinach and print out like the spinach constant. And in the lettuce, we're going to do same, and let's use and print out like the let's use constant. All right, so when we have all this done, right, if we come and we clear this and we run scab Cairo run, you would usually expect that would also get the printouts of apple, orange, lettuce, and so on and so forth. But as you can see, we didn't get them. We just got the thing which was exposed in Cairo, and that still boils down to what I've said from time, like from the onset, right? Which is that every single thing you want the compiler to see, you have to expose within like the lib.cairo. So what do we want the compiler to see? Well, I want the compiler to see, okay, before then, I want the compiler to see the fruit, the vegetables, and everything contained in it. So something I can do actually, right? Simpler way to approach this is I'm going to create new files and I'm going to call this fruit.cairo. So this file has to, okay, and I'm going to create another new file. I'm going to call this vegetables.cairo. Now you can see we're now having like a more robust and a bit complicated structure. But essentially what I'm trying to do, right, is I'm having this fruit and this garden.cairo, and those two I'm now going to come here and expose them here. So I'm going to tell the compiler there's a file called fruit and there's a file called vegetables I want you to check out. So every time the compiler comes into our create root, which is the lib.cairo, is going to try to say, oh, okay, so there are extra files called fruit and vegetables that they want me to, Darlington wants me to check out. So I'm going to go check out like these files. Then we're going to fruit.cairo, and we want fruit.cairo, right, to expose all the things within like this fruit folder. So I'm going to come here and say, okay, remember, as always, I want it to be exposed, right? So I can make it public, right? So pub mod apple. So I want you to expose apple, and pub mod orange. So I want you to also expose like orange. And we can do the same for vegetables.cairo. So it goes into the vegetables folder. So when we do this, essentially, we're telling it, okay, within the vegetables folder, I want you to expose some things. So I want you to expose lettuce, and I want you to expose spinach. All right. So as you can see, we're having an error. Plugin then no stick. Okay. I think to do this, we probably have to have a function. All right. So I don't know. I don't think we can have another main function here. Can we? Let me try that. No, I don't think so. We can only have one main function, which is like the entry point for we already created earlier. So if we really want this to show, something else we could do, right, is, all right, so rather than, I'm just going to, because we have to call this print line inside the function. So I'm just going to clear this. And what I'm going to do, right, is within the lib.cairo, we can actually like import those things and use them. So we can say, we want to import, what's the first thing we're going to import? So within veggie garden, I want to import fruit. And now the thing we learned about grouping items, right? Within fruit, I want to import orange and I want to import apple. Now we can do the same thing. So use again within veggie garden, vegetable, I want to import lettuce, and I want to import spinach. All right. So when we do this, we now have access to this within this particular module. And remember, we made them public, right? So let me confirm. Yeah, we made all of them public. So what we can do is we can just, right now we have all those available. We have this orange, apple, lettuce, spinach. All right. Now we can do something like this. So I'm going to try to print this. Well, we don't have access to Apple directly. What we have access to like is these files. So I can do something like Apple. I believe within Apple, we have like, the Apple module, and within it, we now have like this Apple, right? So the same thing too, I can duplicate the same for like orange. So I'm just going to come here and, cut this out. Right. So in this, I'm going to do the same for orange. So, right, this, instead of doing this, we could also still come here and say, okay, I want to import everything down to like the last module. And I can do the same here. I want to import everything down to like the last module. And I can even still import the constants too. That's if we made, I believe we made the constants public too. So let's just do that. Let's import everything down to the last. So this is a lot more cleaner. All right. So I'm going to import Apple to down to like the constant, which is Apple, which we want to use. We can do the same for lettuce. Say I want to import everything down to like the lettuce constant. And I can do the same for spinach. I want to import everything down to like the spinach constant. All right. So now I'm going to go to spinach and I'm going to clear this. All right. Let's see. The lettuce, we still have to clear this too. Okay, so within our lib.cairo, we have to let's just print out let's just copy this, and I'm going to print out for lettuce and spinach. So lettuce, and I'm going to print out lettuce, and I'm going to do the same for spinach, and I'm going to print out spinach. All right, so it says we have an error. What's the error? The name spinach is defined multiple times. All right, so we imported this, so we can actually, I believe we should be able to use an alias here, so we could say we want to import spinach as veggie spinach. All right, and now we can just simply use that instead. So you can see how aliases are like very important. So that's a lot we've probably done, and might have been a bit difficult for you to follow. So you could always feel free to like rewind the video and check like what we just did out. All right, so if we clear this and we run scarf Cairo run, so this should compile without issues, and you can see our apple, orange, lettuce, and spinach. So I hope this like helped you like understand module like to the very last. So like I said, if you probably got lost at any point, you can just like rewind the video and probably try to check out where you got lost. And also the code is going to be available on GitHub, so you can always like check out the GitHub repo, refer to it, and check out if where you like you got things wrong. And yeah, because of time, we're going to like be stopping here. Now from next week, we're going to be looking into more complex stuff such as understanding generic types and traits. I know this is like that's an episode I've personally been and spitting, so I'm looking forward to like seeing you in the next episode. As always, if you love this particular episode, please like, subscribe, share with someone else, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Yeah, take care.